I woke up that morning feeling a kind of peace I hadn't felt in months. The sun was just creeping through the blinds, soft and golden, and I lay there for a minute, letting it sink in. This was my wedding day. Mariel and I had been planning it forever, it seemed. I could still picture us sitting on her couch, laughing about cake flavors, arguing over whether the venue should have those big arched windows or the rustic barn vibe. I'd written my vows weeks ago, scratching them out in a notebook while she slept beside me, her hair spilling over the pillow. Today was the day I'd say them out loud, make them real. It wasn't just a party, it was the start of everything we'd dreamed about together. I got out of bed, showered, and put on my tux, the one I'd picked out after 3 trips to the tailor to get it just right. The drive to the venue felt light, like my heart was floating somewhere above the dashboard. I got there early, waved at the staff setting up the flowers, and took a deep breath. This was it. Then I saw her, Valerie, Mariel's mother, walking toward me across the lawn. She had this strange look on her face, calm but too calm, like the air before a storm hits. She stopped in front of me, her heels clicking on the stone path, and leaned in close. "There's been a change," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. My stomach tightened, but I didn't say anything yet. A change? What kind of change? My mind started spinning. Maybe the caterer canceled, or the flowers didn't show up. But then I turned my head, just a little, and that's when I saw him. Owen. My best friend since we were kids, the guy I'd asked to be my best man, standing up at the altar. He wasn't just standing there, though, he was wearing my tux. The same one I'd had fitted, the one I was supposed to be wearing right now. And he was smiling, that easy grin of his, like this was all normal. My blood went cold, like someone had dumped ice water down my spine. I looked back at Valerie, waiting for her to explain, but she just stared at me, her eyes daring me to react. I didn't. Not yet. I couldn't even find the words. Mariel wasn't in sight, but the guests were starting to file in, chatting and laughing like nothing was wrong. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What was happening? Was this a joke? A mistake? I wanted to storm up there, grab Owen by the collar, and demand answers, but something held me back. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was the part of me that needed to see how far this would go. So I stayed. I didn't run, didn't shout, didn't do anything but watch as the day I'd built in my head started slipping out of my hands. Valerie turned and walked away, her heels clicking again, leaving me standing there alone. I took a step forward, then another, my polished shoes scuffing the grass. The air felt thick, like I was moving through water, but I kept going, closer to the altar, closer to whatever this was. Owen adjusted his tie, my tie, and nodded at someone in the crowd. My chest burned. This wasn't just a change. This was a betrayal, unfolding right in front of me, and I was the only one who seemed to know it. I could have left. I could have turned around, gotten in my car, and driven until the gas ran out. But I didn't. I needed to see it play out, needed to understand why the woman I loved and the friend I trusted were standing there, acting like I didn't exist. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but I kept my face steady. Whatever this was, I wasn't going to let them see me break, not yet. I took a deep breath, the kind that hurts going in, and moved toward the seats. If they wanted to play this game, I'd watch every second of it. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I don't know how I ended up in that front row seat, but there I was, sitting like some guest at my own wedding, watching everything I'd planned unfold without me. The music started, our playlist, the one Mariel and I had spent hours arguing over, laughing about how she wanted more pop and I wanted something classic. Now it was playing, soft and cheerful, while Owen stood up there in my tux, looking like he belonged. My hands gripped the edge of the chair, though it smooth under my fingers, and I kept my eyes locked on him. He had this smug little twist to his mouth, like he'd won something, like he'd outsmarted me. Mariel came down the aisle a minute later, her white dress glowing in the sunlight, her smile so bright it almost hurt to look at her. She was radiant, just like I'd pictured her 100 times, except she wasn't walking toward me. She was walking toward him. The guests clapped and whispered about how beautiful she looked, how perfect this all was, and not one of them seemed to notice the actual groom was sitting right here, invisible. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a rope around it and kept pulling, but I didn't move. I didn't yell. I just watched. Owen and I had been friends since we were 10, building forts in his backyard, sneaking out to ride our bikes past curfew, splitting a pizza when we were broke in college. I'd introduced him to Mariel 2 years ago at a barbecue, laughing when he tripped over his words trying to talk to her. And now here he was, stealing my life while everyone smiled and nodded along. The ceremony buzzed around me, people shifting in their seats, the officiant clearing his throat, the faint hum of the photographer snapping pictures. Every detail was mine. The flowers on the tables? I'd picked those, arguing with the florist about keeping it simple. The chairs with the little white ribbons? My idea, because Mariel said she wanted something elegant but not fussy. Even the way the sunlight hit the altar just right, that was the time slot I'd fought for, knowing it'd look perfect. And now Owen was standing in the middle of it, wearing my clothes, taking my place. I could feel the heat rising in my neck, my pulse pounding in my ears, but I stayed still. My jaw clenched so hard it ached, but I didn't let it show. Valerie was off to the side, watching everything with that same eerie calm she did when she told me about the change. She didn't even glance my way, just stood there like a queen overseeing her little kingdom. Mariel reached the altar, and Owen took her hand, my best friend touching the woman I loved, acting like it was natural. The officiant started talking, some generic stuff about love and commitment, and I almost laughed. Commitment? Owen didn't know the meaning of the word. He'd bailed on jobs, girlfriends, promises, always with that same grin and a shrug. But here he was, playing the part like he'd rehearsed it. The guests were eating it up, smiling and dabbing their eyes, completely clueless. I could have stood up right then, shouted the truth, flipped a table, something, anything to stop this nightmare. But I didn't. There was power in staying quiet and letting them think they'd gotten away with it. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms, and kept my face blank. My mind was racing, though piecing it together, trying to figure out when this had started. Had Owen been planning this all along? Had Mariel? The thought made my stomach twist, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to lose it here, not in front of everyone. Silence was my weapon now, sharp and heavy, and I'd wield it until the right moment. Owen glanced my way for half a second, and I saw it, a flicker of something in his eyes, maybe nerves, maybe guilt. Good. He should be nervous. Mariel didn't look at me at all, her gaze fixed on him, her smile steady. The officiant kept droning on, and I sat there, a ghost at my own wedding, letting the storm build inside me. They thought they could erase me, rewrite the story like I'd never been part of it. But I was still here, watching every move, every lie. And I wasn't going anywhere, not until I understood exactly what they'd done and why. This wasn't their day anymore. It was mine, and they didn't even know it yet. The moment the officiant turned to Owen and asked him to say his vows, I felt the air shift, like the whole room was holding its breath without knowing why. Owen straightened up, still in my tux, and started speaking slow, confident, like he'd practiced this 100 times. The words sounded familiar, too familiar, and then it hit me. Those were my words, or at least close to them. I'd helped him tweak some lines months ago when he was joking about proposing to his girlfriend back then, some girl he'd dumped a week later. Now he was using them on Mariel, my Mariel, like they were his own. My hands tightened on the chair arms, the wood creaking under my grip, but I kept my face still. Then it was her turn. Mariel smiled up at him, her voice soft and clear, starting her vows I'd imagined her saying to me. That was it. I couldn't sit there anymore, couldn't let this charade keep rolling like I wasn't even in the room. I stood up, slow and steady, my shoes quiet on the carpeted aisle. Every muscle in my body was tense, but I kept my breathing even. Actually, I have something to say, I said, my voice cutting through the ceremony like a crack of thunder. Heads whipped around. Guests, the officiant, even the photographer froze mid-shot. Mariel's face went white, like all the blood had drained out of her in a second. Owen's smile vanished, his eyes narrowing as he stared at me. Valerie took a step forward from the side, her lips tight, and hissed, "Sit down, now." But I didn't sit. I didn't even look at her. I started walking toward the altar, my steps deliberate, my heart pounding, but my hands steady. This was my moment, my wedding, and I wasn't about to let them finish this lie without me saying my piece. The guests started murmuring, a low buzz rippling through the crowd. Some confused, some curious, a few probably thrilled at the drama. I could feel their eyes on me, but I kept mine locked on Owen and Mariel. She opened her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to stop me, but I didn't give her the chance. I reached the altar and stopped, standing just a few feet from them, close enough to see the sweat beading on Owen's forehead. "Go ahead," I said, my voice calm but loud enough to carry. "Finish your vows. Tell her how much you love her, in my tux, at my wedding, with my words." Owen swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, but he didn't say anything. Mariel's hands trembled, the bouquet shaking in her grip. The officiant stepped back, clutching his little book like he wanted to disappear into it. I turned to the crowd, all those faces staring at me, some I knew, some I didn't, all part of the life Mariel and I had built together. This was supposed to be my day, I said, keeping my tone even, like I was just stating a fact. I planned it. I paid for it. I wrote the vows Owens trying to pass off as his own. And now I'm standing here watching my best friend and my fiancé act like I don't exist. The murmurs got louder, people shifting in their seats, whispering to each other. I could see my cousin Leah in the second row, her eyes sharp, nodding like she'd been waiting for this. Valerie moved closer, her voice low and furious. You're ruining everything. Stop this. I turned to her, meeting her glare head on. No, Valerie. You ruined it. You and them. I'm just here to set it straight. Owen finally found his voice, stammering. Look, man, this isn't what you think, but I cut him off. Don't, I said, sharp enough to make him flinch. Don't lie to me now. You're standing where I should be, wearing what I should be wearing. You don't get to talk your way out of this. Mariel's eyes filled with tears, her lips parting like she wanted to say something, but I didn't look at her long enough to hear it. I wasn't ready for her excuses, not yet. The air was thick with tension, the whole room waiting to see what I'd do next. I could have punched Owen, could have torn the flowers off the altar and stormed out, but that wasn't me. I had something better. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and held it up. I've got proof, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Let's see how you explain this. The gasp started then, soft at first, then spreading like wildfire. Owen's face went slack. Mariel's hands flew to her mouth, and Valerie froze mid-step. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just stood there, ready to bring the truth crashing down on them, because this wasn't their story anymore, it was mine, and I was taking it back. I stood there at the altar, my phone in hand, the crowd buzzing like a hive of bees that didn't know whether to sting or scatter. Owen's eyes darted to Mariel, then back to me, his smug mask cracking under the weight of what was coming. Mariel's tears were starting to spill, but I didn't let that soften me, not yet. Valerie was still glaring, her arms crossed tight, like she could will me to disappear if she stared hard enough. I tapped play on my phone, holding it up so the sound carried over the gasps and whispers. Owen's voice came through first, clear as day. He's not assertive enough. Mariel needs someone stronger. It was from a call I'd recorded a few weeks ago, back when I thought he was just venting about some work thing, not plotting to take my life. The crowd went quiet, every word sinking in like a stone. Then the second clip started, Valerie this time, her tone cold and clipped. We're swapping the groom. Quietly. He won't fight back. I'd caught that one by accident, her voice drifting through a cracked door when I'd gone to pick up some paperwork from her house. I'd saved it, not sure why, just a gut feeling that something was off. Now I knew. The guests erupted, some shouting, some muttering, a few just staring with their mouths open. Mariel tried to step forward, her voice shaky. Please, let me explain, but I held up a hand, stopping her cold. No, I said, my voice steady but firm. You don't get to talk yet. You've had months to explain, and instead you let me walk into this. The officiant was backing away now, clutching his book like it was a shield, his eyes wide as he glanced between me and the chaos unfolding. I turned to Owen, who was shifting on his feet, looking like a kid caught stealing. Anything to say? I asked, keeping my tone flat. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his hands flexing at his sides. Good. Let him squirm. Then my cousin Leah stepped up beside me, cool as ever, holding a stack of papers. She handed them to the wedding planner, who'd been hovering near the altar, unsure what to do. This is the financial contract for the Crosswell wedding, Leah said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My cousin owns the rights to this entire event, venue, vendors, everything. Signed and paid for by him. The planner's eyes widened as she skimmed the pages, her fingers trembling. I took over, facing the crowd again. See, I didn't just plan this wedding, I funded it. Every cent. The deposit on this place? Mine. The catering? Mine. Even the damn tux Owen's wearing, I paid for that too. A few people gasped, others nodded like they were starting to piece it together. I kept going. They thought they could swap me out, rewrite the day like I'd just fade away. But this is my wedding, legally and otherwise, and I'm taking it back. Valerie snapped, her voice cutting through the noise. This is ridiculous. You're making a fool of yourself. I turned to her, calm as ever. No, Valerie. You made a fool of me. I'm just showing everyone who you really are. The crowd was splitting now. Some guests stood up, craning their necks to see. Others stayed seated, whispering furiously. My buddy Tom from college was in the back, shaking his head like he couldn't believe it. Aunt Rita looked ready to storm the altar herself. I didn't care about the drama, though. I cared about the truth. I tapped my phone again, pulling up a photo I'd taken months ago. Me signing the venue contract, the date stamped clear as day. I held it up, letting the screen glow in the sunlight. "This is mine," I said. "And you don't get to steal it." Owen finally spoke, his voice low and rough. "Look, man, it wasn't supposed to go like this." I cut him off. "Then how is it supposed to go? You wake up, put on my clothes, marry my fiancée, and I just nod and clap? Tell me, Owen, how does that work?" He didn't answer, just stared at the floor. Mariel was crying harder now, her bouquet drooping in her hands. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, barely above a whisper. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a second, I felt that old ache, the one that used to hit me when she smiled, when she laughed, when she was mine. But it wasn't enough. "You didn't mean to?" I said. "You stood there, in my wedding, with him, and you didn't mean to? Save it, Mariel." The planner was flipping through the contract now, her face pale, muttering something about calling her boss. Leah leaned in close to me, her voice quiet. "We've got them. This is airtight." I nodded, feeling the weight of it settle in. Not victory, not yet, just the start of something. The guests were still reeling, the air thick with shock and anger and confusion. I didn't care. I'd brought the receipts, laid them out for everyone to see, and now they couldn't pretend anymore. This wasn't their day to control, it was mine, and I was done letting them think otherwise. The room exploded after I laid out the proof, guests jumping up, voices overlapping, a mess of noise that hit me like a wave. I stood there at the altar, phone still in my hand, watching it all fall apart. Owen's face was tight, his jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. Mariel's tears were streaming now, her mascara smudging black streaks down her cheeks, but I didn't feel sorry, not after what they'd done. Valerie's calm was gone, her eyes flashing as she barked at the wedding planner to fix this, like it was some spilled drink she could mop up. The planner just clutched Leah's contract, shaking her head, muttering about legal trouble. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just let the chaos swirl around me. My cousin Leah stayed close, her arms crossed, a quiet strength in her stance that told me she had my back. The guests were shouting now, some at Owen, some at Mariel, a few at me, like I was the one who'd ruined the day. "What's going on?" My buddy Tom yelled from the back, his voice cutting through the din. Aunt Rita was on her feet, waving a finger at Valerie. "You ought to be ashamed," she hollered. I almost smiled at that, almost, but my chest was too heavy for it. I turned to Owen, my voice low so only he could hear over the racket. "How long?" I asked, staring him down. He shifted, his eyes flicking to the floor, then back up. "It just happened," he muttered, barely loud enough to reach me. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that surprised even me. "You don't just wake up in another man's tux and walk into his wedding by accident, Owen. Try again." He didn't. He just stood there, hands stuffed in his pockets, my pockets, looking like a kid caught sneaking candy. Mariel stepped toward me, her voice trembling. "It wasn't planned like this. I swear." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Don't," I said, sharp and final. "You don't get to swear anything to me anymore." She flinched, stepping back, and for a second, I saw the girl I loved, the one who'd laughed with me over burnt dinners, who'd curled up next to me on rainy nights. But that girl was gone, buried under whatever this was. I turned to the crowd, raising my voice so they'd all hear. "This contract," I said, pointing at the papers the planner was still holding, "says if the wedding's altered without my written consent, everyone involved, Owen, Mariel, Valerie, is liable for fraud and financial damages." Leah nodded beside me, her lawyer voice kicking in. "That's right. Breach of contract, misrepresentation, the works. We've got the recordings, the signatures, everything." The guests went wild again, some cheering, some gasping, a few just staring like they were watching a movie. Valerie snapped, "This is nonsense. You can't prove intent." I looked at her, calm as ever. "Your own voice on that recording says otherwise." Swapping the groom. Quietly. "That's intent, Valerie. And I've got it saved in 3 different places." Her mouth shut fast, her face going red. Owen tried again, his voice desperate now. "Look, man, I didn't want it to blow up like this." I spun on him. "Then why'd you do it? Why'd you stand there, in my clothes, marrying my fiancée, if you didn't want this? You thought I'd just shrug and walk away?" He didn't answer, just stared at me, his eyes hollow. Mariel was sobbing now, loud and messy, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't. The officiant finally spoke up, his voice shaky. I think we should pause the ceremony. I cut him off. There's no ceremony to pause. This isn't their wedding. It's mine, and it's over. The room went quiet for a second, just long enough for that to sink in. Then the noise roared back. Guests arguing, some heading for the exits, others crowding closer like they didn't want to miss a thing. My buddy Tom pushed through, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "You okay, man?" he asked, his eyes wide. I nodded, barely feeling his grip. "Yeah, I'm good." I wasn't, not really, but I'd fake it until I was. Leah leaned in, her voice low. "We've got them dead to rights. Fraud's just the start. There's emotional distress, maybe even theft if we push it." I glanced at her, grateful for her fire. "Let's push it," I said. She smirked, nodding. Valerie was yelling at someone now, probably the planner, while Owen just stood there, useless, the tux hanging off him like a costume he didn't know how to wear. Mariel sank into a chair, her dress pooling around her, her sobs quieter but still there. I looked at them, all three of them, and felt the lies burn out, exposed under the light of everything I'd brought. The crowd was a mess, but I didn't care. I'd torn their little plan to pieces, and they couldn't hide anymore. This wasn't about winning. It was about showing them they couldn't erase me. And I'd done that. Now they'd face the collapse, and I'd walk away standing. I turned my back on them, Owen, Mariel, Valerie, and walked away from that altar, leaving them standing there like statues in a scene that didn't make sense anymore. The crowd was still buzzing, a mix of shock and excitement crackling through the air, but I didn't stop to listen. My shoes hit the stone path outside the venue, the sound sharp and steady, matching the thud of my heart. Some guests followed me, Tom jogging to catch up, Aunt Rita calling my name. A few others I didn't recognize trailing behind like they wanted to see what I'd do next. I didn't say anything, just kept moving until I hit the parking lot, the cool evening air hitting my face. "You sure you're okay?" Tom asked again, his voice rough with worry. I nodded, unlocking my car. "Yeah, I just need to breathe." He clapped my shoulder and stepped back, letting me go. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and sat there for a minute, staring at the dashboard. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the lies, the way they'd tried to erase me pressed down hard, but I didn't break. Not yet. I drove home, the roads quiet, the sun dipping low and painting everything orange. When I got there, I didn't even change out of my suit, just grabbed my laptop, sat on the couch, and typed one sentence. My best friend wore my tux and married my fiancée while I sat in the front row. They thought I wouldn't show up. I did. I hit post, watched it go live online, and leaned back. I didn't expect much, just needed to get it out, let it sit somewhere outside my head. But then my phone started buzzing. First a few notifications, then a flood, likes, comments, shares, piling up fast. I opened it and saw the numbers climbing hundreds, then thousands. Screenshots from the wedding popped up. Someone must have snapped them during the chaos. A blurry video of me at the altar, holding up my phone, my voice steady as I called them out. The internet latched on quick, and soon people were calling me the Vanished Crew. It was everywhere, strangers arguing about who was worse, Owen or Mariel, others praising me for not punching anyone, a few even joking about hiring me to crash their exes' weddings. I didn't care about going viral, though. This wasn't about fame or revenge, it was about tearing down what they'd built on my back. I scrolled through it all, the comments blurring together, until one caught my eye. They thought they could bury him, but he buried them instead. That stuck with me. I set the phone down and looked around my place, quiet, empty, the way it had been since Mariel stopped coming over. The collapse was starting, and I could feel it. Owen's smug grin wouldn't last long, not with his face plastered online, tied to this mess. Mariel's perfect image, the one she'd polished for years, was cracking under the weight of her own choices. And Valerie, her fancy reputation wouldn't survive this, not when the clips of her voice started spreading. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water, the cold sinking into my hand. My mind kept replaying it. Owen in my tux, Mariel's smile, Valerie's calm little change. How long had they planned this? When did they decide I wasn't enough? I didn't have answers yet, but I'd get them. For now, I'd let the world do its work. The post kept growing, reporters messaging me, old friends texting, even a random guy asking if I'd sell the story. I ignored it all. This wasn't about cash or attention. It was about rebuilding, starting with their downfall. I went back to the couch, sat down, and stared at the ceiling. The anger was still there, hot and sharp, but something else was growing too. A quiet strength, a certainty that I'd come out of this standing taller than they ever would. My phone buzzed again, Leah this time. "You see this online," she texted. "They're toast." I typed back, "Good. Let it burn." She sent a thumbs up, and I set the phone aside. The night stretched out, dark and still, but I didn't feel alone. I felt awake, alive, like I'd just shaken off something heavy. They'd thought I'd vanish, slink away quietly while they played house with my life. But I hadn't. I'd shown up, stood up, and now the fallout was theirs to deal with. I wasn't done, not by a long shot. This was just the start, the first crack in their perfect little world, and I'd keep pushing until it shattered. I closed my eyes, let out a slow breath, and felt the tension ease just a little. The vanish groom, huh? Fine. Let them call me that. Because I wasn't vanishing anymore, I was rebuilding, and they'd feel every step of it. I didn't sleep much that night after the wedding blew up online. The adrenaline kept me wired, my mind spinning with everything that had happened. By morning, my phone was still buzzing, the story spreading like wildfire, but I didn't care about the noise. I cared about what came next. Mariel's family had always been big on appearances, old money, fancy parties, everything polished and perfect. Valerie ran the show, her event planning business a shiny little empire built on control and secrets. I'd stayed quiet about it all out of respect, biting my tongue when she'd nitpick my ideas or push Mariel to act a certain way. But that was over. They'd crossed me, and now I'd hit back where it hurt. I started making calls, old friends, people I hadn't talked to in years, anyone who might know something about Valerie's world. First was Jake, a guy I'd met through Mariel. He'd worked for Valerie's firm a while back, quit under weird circumstances. "Yeah, man," he said when I got him on the phone, his voice low like he was still scared of her. "She's got a playbook. Silence anyone who doesn't fit her plan." I signed an NDA, but screw it. She fired me after I questioned some shady billing. I asked him to send me anything he had, emails, texts, whatever. He hesitated, then said, "Give me a day." Next, I called Sarah, a college friend who'd done PR for one of Valerie's clients. She didn't even wait for me to ask. "Oh, I've got stories," she said, laughing darkly. She swapped out vendors last minute once, pocketed the difference, thought no one noticed. By noon, I had a folder, screenshots, voice memos, even a grainy photo of Valerie handing an envelope to someone at a party. It wasn't hard proof yet, but it was a start. I kept going, digging deeper, fueled by coffee and the fire in my gut. Then Jake came through, an audio file, Valerie's voice sharp. "If they talk, bury them. We've got the contracts." I smiled for the first time in days. This was gold. I sent it all to Valerie's biggest investor, a guy named Paul Hensley. Old school, rich, hated being lied to. I'd met him once at some gala Mariel dragged me to. He liked my handshake, said I seemed solid. Now I wrote him a short email. "Thought you should know who you're funding. Listen to this." I attached the files and hit send. No threats, no ranting, just the truth, laid out plain. While that brewed, I turned to Owen. He built a decent marketing agency over the years, leaned hard on our friendship to get clients. My name dropped in pitches, my referrals keeping him afloat. I'd never minded, figured that's what friends do. Now it made me sick. I checked online. His agency's social pages were already getting hit, comments piling up about the wedding, people tagging him in my post. I didn't need to do much. The internet was handling it. Sure enough, by afternoon, a press release popped up, his biggest client, some tech startup, parting ways with him. No explanation, just corporate speak for, "You're toxic now." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight shift. Then there was Mariel. She'd been on the board of a nonprofit we'd started together, small, but it mattered to us, helping kids with art programs. I'd poured money into it, covered gaps when donations dried up. She loved the spotlight it gave her, the photo ops, the praise. I called the treasurer, a quiet guy named Mark who'd always been straight with me. "Pull my funding," I said. "Effective today." He paused, then asked, "You sure? That's half our budget." I was sure. "She can figure it out," I said. "I'm done carrying her." He sighed but agreed. By evening, I heard she'd been asked to step down, couldn't lead without cash to back her up. I didn't feel good about it, exactly, just empty, like I'd cut a cord that had been fraying for too long. The day wore on, and my phone lit up again, Paul Hensley's assistant, asking for a meeting. He's concerned, she said. Wants to hear more. I said it for tomorrow, kept my voice calm. Happy to help. Then I sat back, staring at the mess of papers and coffee cups on my table. Valerie's empire was wobbling, NDAs breaking, investors sniffing around, her perfect facade shattering bit by bit. Owen's career was tanking, his name mud online and off. Mariel's golden image was tarnished, her board seat gone. I'd done that not with fists or shouting, but with quiet moves, letting their own actions bury them. The anger was still there, simmering, but it had purpose now. I wasn't just reacting. I was dismantling what they'd built, piece by piece. I stood up, stretched, and looked out the window at the darkening sky. This wasn't the end, not yet. They'd feel this for a while, and I'd keep pushing until the mask was off completely. For the first time since the wedding, I felt like me again, not the guy they'd tried to erase, but the one who'd fight back, steady and sure. I woke up the next morning with a clear head, the kind of focus I hadn't felt since before the wedding turned my life upside down. Leah had been on me for days about taking this to court, said we had enough to nail them, not just for the wedding but for everything they'd tried to pull. I agreed. No more quiet moves behind the scenes. It was time to face them head-on, let a judge sort it out. We filed the lawsuit that afternoon, breach of contract, fraud, emotional distress, the whole list Leah had rattled off. Valerie and Owen tried to call me after the papers were served, probably hoping to talk me down, settle it quiet. I didn't pick up. I'd given them enough chances to explain, and they'd fed me lies every time. This was going to court, and I wasn't backing off. The day came fast, a gray morning. The courthouse steps slick with rain when I walked up them with Leah. Inside, it was all wood panels and stiff chairs, the air thick with that stale smell of old paper and tension. Valerie was there, dressed sharp, her face set like she could intimidate the room into siding with her. Owen slouched beside her, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, his tie crooked. Mariel wasn't there. Leah said she'd been named in the suit but wasn't required to show yet. I didn't care. The judge was a woman, older, with a no-nonsense vibe, sharp eyes behind her glasses, her voice crisp when she called the case. Leah laid it out first, calm and precise, walking the judge through the wedding contract, the recordings, the money I'd sunk into it all. She played the clips, Owen's not assertive enough, Valerie's swapping the groom, and I watched the judge's face stay stone cold, no hint of what she thought. I took the stand next, my hands steady on the rail as I told it straight. I planned my wedding, I said, keeping my voice even. Paid for it, built it from the ground up with my fiancée. Then my best friend and her mother decided I didn't fit their picture. They replaced me, put him in my tux, used my vows, my guest list, everything without a word. I've got the proof they planned it. Thought I'd just disappear. The judge nodded slightly, scribbling something, and I kept going. I trusted them. Owen was my friend since we were kids. Mariel was the woman I loved. Valerie was family, or so I thought. They didn't just take my wedding. They took my life and acted like it was theirs to rewrite. Leah handed up the contract, the receipts, every scrap we'd gathered. Valerie's lawyer went next, a slick guy in a suit that probably cost more than my car. He tried to spin it, said it was all a misunderstanding, that I'd abandoned the wedding by not stopping it sooner. If he owned it, why'd he sit there and let it happen? He asked, smirking like he'd scored a point. Leah jumped up. Because he was blindsided, betrayed by the people closest to him. He acted as soon as he had proof. The judge cut in, her voice dry. I'll decide what the evidence says, counsel. Move on. Valerie took the stand after, playing the matriarch card hard. I was protecting my daughter, she said, her tone smooth, almost teary. Mariel deserved someone who'd stand up for her, not someone who'd let things fall apart. I clenched my jaw but didn't react. Leah leaned over, whispering she's digging her own grave. Owen was worse, mumbled about how it just happened, claimed he didn't know the full plan, said he was caught up in the moment. The judge looked at him like he was a bug under her shoe. You wore another man's clothes and stood at his wedding, she said. That's not a moment. That's a choice. The room went quiet after that, everyone waiting. The judge took her time, flipping through papers, then finally spoke. The evidence is clear, she said. The contract was breached. The recordings show intent. The defendants acted with disregard for the plaintiff's rights and well-being. She ruled in my favor, $86,000 in damages, split between Owen and Valerie, plus court costs. Then she tacked on something bigger. I'm referring Ms. Valerie's business practices to the state for investigation. This pattern raises questions. Valerie's face went white, her lawyer sputtering objections that got shut down fast. Leah grinned beside me, a rare crack in her cool. We walked out as the gavel hit, cameras flashing outside, reporters shouting questions, shoving mics in my face. I didn't stop, didn't speak, just kept my head up and moved through them. Leah handled it, tossing a quick "justice was served" before we hit the car. Inside, she turned to me. "You good?" I nodded, staring out the window at the rain. "Yeah, it's done." It wasn't joy I felt, just relief, like a knot in my chest finally loosening. They tried to bury me, but the courtroom laid it bare, their lies, their schemes, all crumbling under the weight of what I'd brought. Valerie's empire was on notice, Owen's excuses didn't hold, and Mariel, wherever she was, couldn't hide from this forever. I didn't need to say a word outside. Their own actions had condemned them, and that was enough for now. I left town a week after the courtroom win, the taste of it still fresh but already fading into something quieter. The city I'd lived in, where I'd met Mariel, built a life with her, laughed with Owen over beers, felt like a ghost town now, every corner haunted by what used to be. I didn't want to stay and watch the fallout play out in real time. Didn't want to bump into old friends asking questions or see Valerie's face on some local news clip. So I packed up, my clothes, my laptop, a few books, and drove 3 hours to a new place, a smaller city with wide streets and a river cutting through it. I rented a simple apartment, nothing fancy, just a bed, a desk, and a view of the water. It was a clean slate, and I needed that. The first few days were quiet, unpacking, walking the neighborhood, letting the newness sink in. Then I got to work. I'd always been good at fixing messes, ironic, considering the one I'd just climbed out of, so I started a consulting firm. Small at first, just me and a website, offering PR sabotage and brand redemption. The name came easy, Crosswell Solutions, a nod to the wedding that never was, a way to take it back and make it mine. Clients trickled in, businesses hit by scandals, a couple of local politicians caught in dumb lies. I'd tear down the spin, then build them back up, step by step. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control, about knowing how to break something and put it together better. Word spread fast. People liked that I didn't sugarcoat, that I'd been through my own fire and come out sharp. One night, a few months in, I was sitting at my desk, the river glinting outside under the streetlights, when I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, just my name scrawled in shaky handwriting on a plain envelope. I opened it, and my stomach tightened. Real S writing. I'd know it anywhere. I thought I was choosing strength. It started. I chose cowardice. "I'm sorry." That was all I read. I didn't need the rest, didn't want it. I held the paper over the trash can, lit a match from the drawer, and watched it burn, the edges curling black before it dropped. The smoke stung my eyes, but I didn't blink. She didn't get to apologize now, not after everything. Her words didn't change what she'd done, didn't undo the hole she'd left. I shook it off, went back to my laptop, kept working. A few days later, my phone pinged. Owen this time, a message popping up. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a minute, his name glowing on the screen like a bad memory. I didn't open it, didn't reply, just deleted it and blocked him. He'd had his chance to talk, at the wedding, in court, any time before he stabbed me in the back. I wasn't here to give him closure. I was here to build mine. The firm grew, more clients, bigger jobs. A restaurant chain hired me after their CEO got caught in a tax mess. I flipped the story, got them trending for transparency instead. A startup paid me to tank a competitor's launch, legal, barely, but effective. Money came in steady, enough to upgrade the apartment, add a couch, a better coffee maker. I didn't flaunt it, didn't need to, just kept moving, kept building. The past stayed where I'd left it, mostly. Some nights, I'd catch myself thinking about Mariel's laugh, Owen's dumb jokes, the way life felt before it all broke. But I'd push it down, focus on the now, the hum of the city outside, the glow of my screen, the work that kept me grounded. One evening, I was sorting emails when Leah called. "You see the news?" she asked, her voice bright. "Valerie's firm got hit. State investigations digging up fraud, maybe embezzlement. She's done." I leaned back, a small nod to myself. "Good," I said. "What about the others?" She laughed. "Owen's agency folded. Nobody'll touch him. Mariel's laying low, probably licking her wounds." I didn't say much after that, just thanked her and hung up. It wasn't triumph, not really, just a quiet knowing that they'd reaped what they sowed. I learned something through it all. Closure isn't a gift you get from someone else. It's not a letter or a courtroom win or an apology you wait for. It's something you make, something you carve out with your own hands. I'd done that, left the city, burned the note, built this life. The river outside sparkled under the moon, steady and calm, and I felt it too, not whole yet, but getting there. The firm was mine, the past was ash, and every day I wrote my own story, bold and clear, no one else holding the pen. I shut the laptop, grabbed a glass of water, and stood by the window, watching the world move on. This was enough for now, me, standing tall, building from the ashes they'd left behind. A year had passed since the wedding that wasn't mine, and I found myself standing in front of a room full of people, not in a tux this time, but in a dark navy suit, crisp, tailored, the kind that says you mean business. It was a conference, some big deal about integrity in business, and they'd asked me to be the closing speaker. I wasn't sure why at first. My firm was doing well, sure, but I wasn't some famous name. Then the organizer told me, "Your story's out there, man. People want to hear from you." So there I was, the mic in my hand, the lights warm on my face, a couple hundred eyes locked on me. I didn't have notes, just a few thoughts I'd rolled around in my head on the drive over. When they try to erase you, speak louder, I started, my voice steady, filling the room. I didn't mention Owen, Mariel, or Valerie by name, didn't need to. The story lived in my tone, in the way I stood there, shoulders back, not hiding. I learned that the hard way, I said. You can plan everything, your work, your life, the promises you make, and someone can still come along and try to take it. Not because they earned it, but because they think you won't fight back. The room was quiet, just the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional cough. I kept going. A while back, I had something mine, something I built, something I believed in, stripped away in front of me. I could have walked off, let it go, let them have it. But I didn't. I stood up, called it out, and took it back, piece by piece. I paused, letting that sink in, my eyes scanning the crowd's suits, ties, a few younger faces scribbling notes. It's not about revenge, I said. It's about knowing what's yours and not letting anyone tell you different. In business, in life, people will test you, clients, partners, friends. They'll push to see if you bend. Don't. Speak up. Hold your ground. Because if you don't, they'll write your story for you. I told them about the firm, not the wedding details, but the work. How I turned messes into wins. How I learned to spot the cracks in a plan before they split wide open. Integrity's not just being honest, I said. It's owning what you do, even when it's hard, even when it costs you. The crowd nodded, a few clapping early, and I wrapped it up. They tried to erase me once. I spoke louder. And I'm still here. I stepped back from the mic, the applause hitting me like a wave, loud, warm, rolling through the room. I didn't smile, just nodded and walked off, feeling the weight of it settle. Backstage, I grabbed a water, took a long sip, and let the noise fade behind me. People started filtering out, some stopping to shake my hand, say they liked the talk. Then this kid, maybe 25, skinny, wide-eyed, came up, his hands fidgeting. "You're the groom, right?" From the story, he asked, his voice quick, like he'd been holding it in. I looked at him, nodded slow. "Yeah, that's me." He shifted, then blurted, "You're why I didn't stay silent either. My boss tried to screw me over, took credit for my work, pushed me out. I read about you online, saw what you did. I fought back, got my job straightened out." I stood there, the water cold in my hand, and felt something click. "Good," I said, meeting his eyes. Then it wasn't for nothing. He grinned, nervous but real, and thanked me before darting off. I watched him go, the room emptying out, and leaned against the wall. That kid, he was why I'd said yes to this, why I'd stood up there and told it. Not for applause or some ego trip, but because maybe someone like him needed to hear it. I'd rewritten my vows, not for a wedding, but for myself, promises to stand tall, to keep going, to make sure no one could take what was mine again. They weren't wasted that day. They'd just been waiting for the right moment, the right room, the right ears. I left the conference, the night air cool against my face, and drove back to my place by the river. The city lights danced on the water, steady and bright, and I felt it too, not finished, not perfect, but solid. Owen was a memory, Mariel a shadow, Valerie a name in someone else's headlines. I didn't need them anymore, not their approval, not their apologies. The firm was growing, the work was mine, and every step I took was on my terms. I parked, walked up to my apartment, and stood by the window, watching the river flow. That day at the altar, I thought I'd lost everything. My love, my friend, my future. But I hadn't. I'd found something better. Me, unbent, unbroken, speaking louder than they ever could. The kid's words stuck with me, You're why I didn't stay silent. I nodded to myself, a small, quiet thing, and knew this was it. The vows I'd meant to say, lived out now, real and strong. The story wasn't over, but the ending? That was mine to write.